Welcome back, everybody. This is your host, Mr. Vlad the Man, and today is our week 2 of our Pokemon Global Pokemon Society Season 7 Minors League in Pokemon Brilliant Shiny and Dining Pearl against none other than our close friend and compatriot, Sindragonlord. This battle did take place last week. Unfortunately, I was super busy with life and couldn't get to editing it right in time. But I will be doing a lot, an after live commentary, but I will be doing some commentary here today on the video itself. If you notice back on the teams, we did have a couple, some pretty menacing threats, and it looked like he was ready for Skarm Bliss combo, but I actually did not bring Skarmory or Chansey into this particular battle, because I wanted to be a bit more aggressive with this playstyle, at least for today's battle, and that does end up being quite fruitful. However, I'm sure you noticed, Scarf Swallow. A little weird, but it makes sense a little bit later in the run when you do find out what it is all about. So he leads off with Shuckle, probably wanting to get Stealth Rock and Sticky Web up. I lead off with Sableye, because I don't want that stuff going up. So once we get to this point, what I'm going to do is I'm immediately going to go for the taunts, because I really don't want any hazards going up at all. However, to my surprise, he actually ends up having a Mental Herb on his Shuckle, meaning he's going to get rocks up anyways. Sucks, but it is what it is. That being said, he gets his rocks off, and, well, that's Shuckle for you. What can you do about it? I still go for the taunt again, because I know he's still got that Sticky Web in the back pocket, and he's also got, what's it called? Sticky Web and Toxic, but I do end up going for the taunt. This time it actually sticks. However, he does predict that, and he ends up going for the knockoff, knocking off my precious Lumberry, which is unfortunate. I like having that Lumberry in case I get poisoned, or in case I get paralyzed later on in the run. So at this point, I'm just going for the Will-O-Wisp. I'm looking to burn that Shuckle so I can get some residual damage off, because I know otherwise its defenses are super bulky, meaning it's going to take me a while to chip away at it with anything on my team. He does end up going for the switch, and ends up going for the Wigglytuff. So Bird Wigglytuff isn't the greatest thing in the world, but it is better than a non-status Wigglytuff, which, in all honesty, does end up playing a nice role in this, because it's all chip damage. All makes very nice chip damage there. Wigglytuff, direct counter to Sableye. There's nothing I can really do to this thing at this point. So what I end up doing, I take into consideration, should I go to Papa Smurf or should I go into Blaziken? Blaziken does provide a few more options, and he's got a Shell Bell equipped, meaning that whenever I deal damage, it's going to gain a little bit of health back. So I decided to go, you know what, let's go into Blaziken and play this out. It is not Speed Boost Blaziken. That variant of Blaziken is banned in this particular tournament. So it is Blaziken, which, in all honesty, is a pretty good variant, especially once you get to that 3rd health mark. Flare Blitz becomes super deadly, but also super suicidal. So I go into Blaziken, and it's a very easy switch. I take some Stealth Rocks damage because he is part Fire type, part Fighting type, so I just take neutral damage at that point in time. He goes for the Dazzling Gleam, deals a really considerable amount of damage. I was not expecting it to do that much damage. But it is what it is. I can't really do anything about it at this point in time. If I switch out, I'm only going to come back in weaker, and at that point, it pretty much Blaziken is dead fodder. So I just go for the safe Poison Jab, because whatever comes in is going to get hit kind of hard, because Blaziken is a pretty offensive Pokemon. But, what can you do? There isn't much else that I can really do in this situation. I know he's got that Latias in his back pocket, which still kind of menacing, but I can deal with it with other Pokemon that I have on my team. While we're waiting for him to make his decision, he does end up withdrawing the Wigglytuff and bringing out that Latias that I mentioned, which is going to take the Poison Jab pretty nicely. But it is still really nice damage that I eventually do take advantage of. As you can see, 1/3 of his health, and he gets poisoned, which is super convenient. Really lucky with those hacks there. And then just a little bit of health from the Shell Bell, but unfortunately not enough that it's going to make any much of a difference. In this instance, I believe Blaziken is still dead to anything that this Latios can bring out. So I end up just going for the Poison Jab again. Or do I end up switching? I was thinking here maybe I get a damage boost to poison Pokemon. It doesn't seem like I do in this instance. And I know that Sableye can take a Draco Meteor pretty well, and that's really what I was expecting. So I switched into Sableye expecting the Draco Meteor. I know I can live a Draco Meteor with this particular Sableye because I have spec'd out for health and special defense. And stones don't really bother me at this point, but he ends up going for the Thunderbolt, which was super random in my opinion. But as you can see, I take it like a champ. It's not going to bother Sableye. So what I do, I just take this turn. I'm going to go ahead and go for the knockoff because I know from this range I can kill that Latios. And if not, then anything that comes in is going to have its item removed. In this case, being the Wigglytuff, which is super convenient. I get rid of its Ipapa Berry, which is super nice because that's a lot of health I would have gained back. And I take advantage of that. So then what I'll end up doing is I do end up just switching out here because Sableye can't take anything that this thing is going to dish out. And it is a difficult decision. Probopass is a good Pokemon to go into with that Body Press, and that's actually what I do end up going into. While he's still trying to make a decision as to what I might end up doing. So I go into the Probopass, one of my safer options on this team. And Body Press can hit just about anything except for that Duskull. That Duskull does still present a pretty ominous weakness that I have. But ultimately, I'm not too terribly worried about it. Because I do still have other Pokemon in my back pocket that can handle it. So what I end up doing here, I go for the Body Press because Probopass's defenses are pretty big. I mean, it's gonna hurt whatever ends up coming in, and he does end up going for the Protect to kind of fish out what I'm gonna do, which is good on his end. It does guarantee that his wish does go off, unfortunately, but what can you do? Wigglytuff's a monster in this game. So at this point, I'm just going to go for another Body Press because, I mean, like I said, huge damage with 430 some odd health or defense. It's going to hurt whatever comes in. I believe at this point I told myself I could have gone for an Iron Defense. You know, just gain a little bit more defense to deal a little bit more damage with Body Press, which isn't a terrible thing, but, I mean, what can you do? Kind of is what it is at this point. Once you click the button, you're locked in for life. And Sindragonlord taking his time, trying to figure out what he wants to do, because he doesn't want anything to just switch in and just take the Body Press like normal. So here we go. I go for the Body Press on the Shuckle, which doesn't deal very much damage, and that's perfectly fine. So what I'll end up doing here, because I believe I start going for Iron Defenses at this point in time, because there isn't really anything that he can do. But he is going to try and set up that Sticky Web, which is a good move. Nope, I end up going for the Volt Switch. And I end up going into... Blaziken. And from here, I'm just kind of weighing my options, like what can I do here, what can I not do here, because I'm kind of in a sticky situation. Blaziken's really low health. It's not going to deal as much as I want it to, and this Shuckle, Shuckle's a bulky boy, anything but. Figured go for the close combat. It might lower my defenses, sure, but it's going to be a nice chunk of damage off of this Shuckle, which does end up working in my favor. which is nice, but that defense and special defense boost isn't going to help out later at all, as you'll find out. He goes for the knockoff, knocks off my Shell Bell, which is unfortunate. You know, I wish I could have kept healing just, you know, even if it's 5 HP. 5 HP is enough for me. So I end up going for a Flare Blitz here, looking to finish off the Shuckle. And if I do, great. If I don't, you know, it is what it is. He does end up withdrawing that Shuckle because he wants to keep it alive as another wall to another Pokemon. And he brings out his Dusclops. So here, Dusclops is going to take a very large amount of damage, which is fine. But unfortunately, that does spell demise for my Blaziken in this instance. So, and that's one down, which means he is currently leading 6-5. This is what I was really surprised about. He had a berry on him, which unfortunately means he gets some of his health back. And I'm not a huge fan of that. So what we end up doing here is I will end up going into the Trees Nuts. And actually, this is actually a running joke in our Nuzlocke, and actually in our Soul Lock, which is why he's named the Trees Nuts. But here, I know that he doesn't want to get hit with a Dark Pulse or even a Sucker Punch. So what he'll end up doing, he'll end up going ahead and switching out in this instance because there's nothing that he wants to take from the Shift Tree that I can dish out, and which opens up for me to go for a Nasty Plot in that instance. And just like clockwork, he does go ahead and switch out the Dusclops and brings back out the Wigglytuff while I go ahead and get Nasty Plot up, bringing me up to +2. Thus making this Shift Tree just a little bit more deadly. The reason I'm shifting my tree, I was really expecting him to bring that Charizard in and bring out the Sun because it's a solar power Charizard that he likes to run. And that's why I ended up bringing the Shift Tree into, so I can go ahead and revenge kill whatever does get killed by the Charizard. But he didn't end up bringing it, so Shift Tree ended up playing more of a support role in this. Something I learned in this match is that Shift Tree actually does outspeed Wigglytuff even after Sticky Webs, which I found super surprising. But what that means is that I was able to take care of the Wigglytuff a little bit more securely than I would have otherwise. So here he's just trying to figure out, like, okay, so what do I want to bring in to take any of these hits? Because there isn't really anything that he wants to have to die to Shift Tree, and he wants to guarantee that he'll outspeed, which I totally understand. So it does take him a little bit to figure out what it is that he wants to do. And so then he brings out Manectric. This is a Choice Specs Manectric, which I thought was really interesting. I didn't know what to expect here, so I ended up going for the Sucker Punch, looking to deal some big damage, because I know that Shift Tree is going to go ahead and just die here anyways, to whatever it is he ends up doing, which is unfortunate, but it kind of is what it is. But that also tells me that I can now effectively switch in something for free. And something that I can take that a little bit better. And this is where we end up bringing out Papa Smurf. Nidoking can usually take a hit from Manectric. However, those Stealth Rocks and that Sticky Web does make things pretty difficult, and I unfortunately don't have anything that can defog in this instance. But I know that if I go for anything, he's going to want to switch out of here because he doesn't want to take an Earth Power. So I end up going for that very safe Sludge Wave. Still stab, still dealing a lot of damage to whatever comes in. And if not, it's going to end up dealing a lot of damage to that Manectric. But I know that he's not going to want to switch out, or that he's not going to want to stay in here. So he is going to go on ahead and switch out in this instance. So here goes for the flamethrower, which I thought was pretty interesting. But Sheer Force Life Orb Sludge Wave does end up taking out the Manectric. So I still ended up getting what I wanted. And it took another Pokemon off the board, which does bring down the score back to 4-4. At this point, he's thinking the Latios is an easy switch in because he does still outspeed me there. And it's an easy kill for him as well. He's still got that Dusclops. I'm already burned. The Dusclops can wall Nidoking pretty well. And he still has does still have a couple other Pokemon. The Medicham being one of them, and I'm surprised he hasn't brought it out yet by this point. So at this point, I look at it. Sableye is not really in a good place to take a Draco Meteor from this point. So at this point, unfortunately, Nidoking is kind of just dead in the water. Nothing else wants to switch into a stab Draco Meteor from a Latios. So, unfortunately, that means that while Latios is bringing down some fiery rocks from the sky, Papa Smurf is now officially deceased. Which sucks, but such is the way of life. But now I can absolutely go ahead and bring in my Sableye or any other Pokemon that I want to just kind of sit in front of this Latios and just kind of either tank or heal the hits. And I end up going into my Sableye because like I said, it's a pretty safe Pokemon to switch into at this point. And what I end up doing is I go ahead and go for the recover because going for extra health with Prankster, always a beneficial thing in my mind. And I know, like I said, I can live a -2 Draco Meteor from Latios. I know that, barring a crit, it's just not going to kill me. And then he does end up switching out, and because he ends up switching out, I can go ahead and safely recover off some health, which does end up benefiting me in the long run. Just make sure that I am, nice and healthy by the time it comes back out. I do end up going for the Will-O-Wisp here, because Will-O-Wisp, like I said, burning Shuckle or doing anything to Shuckle that's a status effect that does damage, super useful. That way, it doesn't completely cripple it, but every little bit of damage helps when you're dealing up with a monster with that much defense and special defense. And then here he does go for the knockoff, probably expecting me to switch into something else. And there's the notification that we have 3 minutes left in this battle. These battles are best 2 out of 3, so even if I had lost this one, it wouldn't have been so bad. At this point, as you can see, we're both kind of at 4-3, with me having 3 and he having 4, but 2 of his Pokemon are statist. And that does put some pressure on me, because I need to either catch up and win, or I need to... or I do need to just kind of catch up and wait for time and to see what happens. Here, I kind of figure he might go for the Toxic because he didn't do anything with that knockoff, and it was gonna be a while if he just kind of sat there trying to beat me down with knockoff. So Taunt does end up going off, and then I just go ahead and start knocking off some, doing the knockoff, because I really don't want to switch into this and lose an item from any of my other Pokemon. So I just kind of sit there, knock off. And he returns the favor by sitting there and knocking off. Lots of knockoffs. And yet another turn of knockoff, followed by knockoff. And finally, the Shuckle is dead. Shuckle is a great Pokemon. I actually do thoroughly enjoy Shuckle as a Pokemon. The design is super cute in my opinion, and it's just, little noodles in a rock. But It's a shame that it doesn't have more health, because I think it'd be a lot more bulky in that case. But I understand why they didn't give it more health. Here he's just thinking about what it is that he wants to do. So he does end up going into the Dusclops, which I know that Sableye can actually handle pretty well. So in this instance, what I'll end up doing, I'll end up going for the taunt, because in case he wants to... No, actually, no, I do end up going for the knockoff, because I was pretty sure from this range I might be able to kill, which I do, and that's nice. Meaning that there's only 40 seconds left on the clock. So we're trying to finish this up before the time runs out. Putting more pressure on him. And at this point in the game, I know I can live a Draco Meteor. I know I can. There's no way that I should be able to die. I've done damage calcs numerous times because of this. So I go for the safer cover because I know I won't outspeed this at this point in time. So I go for the safer cover. And that would put me ahead of the game. 3 Pokemon alive to his 2. And this asshole gets lucky as shit and crits my Sableye, thus putting us at 2-2. But because my Pokemon have more health than his Pokemon, that victory does end up going to me, even though we both have 2 Pokemon left in this instance. But yeah, that's battle 1. Yeah, that's battle 1. So let me see if I can find the beginning of battle 2. Here we go. Oh. There we go. So here, the beginning of battle 2, he does still end up leading with Chuckle. At this point, I don't want Sableye having to deal with this until later in the game. I could give 3 less shits about the Chuckle at this point. I know that with Stealth Rocks and Sticky Webs, I should be okay. So I go for Nidoking to lead. And I figured, you know what? Let's just hit him with an Earth Power. He's going to get its rocks. He's going to get his Sticky Webs up. It just doesn't matter. So let's just go ahead and see if we can take care of this. Unfortunately, it does deal less damage than I hoped. Meaning that this Shuckle is going to get both of its hazards up and then still manage to stay. I do just keep going for Earth Powers. And this time I do get a max damage roll while he still gets his Sticky Webs up. But him keeping Shuckle alive is still in his best interest. While I still keep going for the Earth Power. Because Shuckle is still a good Pokemon for him. He can still deal with other things and bring it in for death fodder later if he needs to. So he ends up bringing out his Dusclops, which still ends up taking the Earth Power really, really well. And yeah, there isn't much that I can really do to those Dusclops at this point in time. Still takes it, and I do end up getting a critical hit there, but because of his berry, he ends up at a little bit over half, meaning that I won't be able to kill this next turn even if I wanted to. But I still sit here, clicking Earth Power. He lives with a minuscule amount of health, and he gets the pain split off, making my job that much harder. So here, I'm still going for the Earth Power, kind of just expecting him to stay in. He does stay in. I go for the Earth Power, and he ends up going for the Will-O-Wisp, burning me. Burning the Nidoking doesn't necessarily bother me too much. I'm not worried about it because he's not a physical attacker. And ultimately, it's just a good thing for me. That means other things aren't burned, which is fine. I don't really expect him to switch out, so I do end up just going for another Earth Power, looking to kill this Dusclops. And he actually does end up staying in, leaving his Dusclops with death fodder, meaning I'm finally taking out one of his Pokemon, leaving us at 5-6-5, with me in 6 and him having 5. At this point, it's in his best interest to either bring out Latios, because he can clean up my Nidoking pretty easily. Or he can swap into one of his other threats on his team, like the Manectric, because that Manectric is still going to be faster than most things on my team, barring Prankster, Sableye, and then of course Swallow, because Swallow's in the air. But he does end up bringing out the Manectric, which is fine. It's calculated. At this point, Nidoking's kind of done what he needs to do. So I do end up going for the Earth Power. I don't expect to live a blast from this Manectric because I'm already at below half health. And I don't. And Papa Smurf ends up going down. From here, I'm just trying to figure out what it is that I want to do. I still got Probo Pass, which can take a few hits from this thing pretty well. And so I decided, you know what, screw it, let's go for it. Let's go into Probo Pass. I'm sure I can take a hit or two from this thing, even though I am part Steel. I still get slowed down by the Sticky Web, but I mean, Probo Pass is already so slow. It's just like, oh man, you've made my rock that already barely moves even slower. Darn. So here I go for the body press. I'm kind of I didn't know if he's going to want to switch out or not because it is a pretty feral Pokemon. He does end up switching out here to the Latios, which does resist the body press. But it's still going to deal a nice chunk of damage because the defenses aren't exactly there. So from here, I'm like, you know what? If I can paralyze the Latios, I know I'll be set. I can cripple it, and I can make it slower than most of the Pokemon on the rest of my team. And that was really the mindset behind this. So I do end up paralyzing him here after taking a hit, which is perfectly fine. And I decide here at this point, you know what, let's go ahead and start stacking the Iron defenses, see if I can get some, get that defense up to bring up the power of Body Press. Because even if I don't end up killing the Latios, it's still building up and dealing a lot of damage to other things that are on his team, and the Dusclops is dead, meaning I don't really have anything to worry about from this point forward as far as the Body Presses are concerned. So it's a pretty safe play. He does end up withdrawing the Latios and bringing out that Wigglytuff, which is a little worrisome. I'd be lying if I didn't say I was worried about what this Wigglytuff can have, because I've never played against Wigglytuff to this extent, so I only know it knows Dazzling Gleam. So I decided, you know what, let's get a body press and see what it can do. And I know that its other two moves are Wish and Protect. And then he pulls out the Flamethrower, which doesn't deal much even after a crit, so I was pretty happy with that. So I go for the body press. I deal a ton of damage. And knowing that his move was a crit really gives me confidence, because that means I can just keep pressing body press, and I'll keep dealing a good amount of damage. He does end up withdrawing Wigglytuff, and does bring back out the Latios, which... it makes sense why he wanted to do that, because he just saw that it doesn't deal a lot of damage, but boosted body press does end up dealing a lot more damage now, which does mean I get a 3-hit. I'm 2 hits away from killing it at this point, but really, because he's faster, he does still have that advantage. He goes for the Thunderbolt. He's not going to be able to kill me in as many turns as I can kill him. He goes down to red health. And Thunderbolt is still not doing much. So I figured, you know what? Safe play. Let's just go body press. That puts me down in the red 26%, which means that Wigglytuff could come back in and end up killing me. Because that crit did end up dealing a good amount of damage beforehand. But we'll see what ends up coming up here forward. He does end up going into his Manectric instead, which I know I can't take a hit from this as far as Flamethrower is concerned. So looking at my available options, I don't really have much that I would like to switch into. I figured that I could probably take a flamethrower with my Blaziken. So I do end up switching in at this point in time. However, he does predict that I'm going to end up switching, and goes for a very neutral move as all the effects are going off. And he goes for the Stab Thunderbolt. At this point, Blaziken's dead. I should have just let Probopass die here, because honestly, it would have been a safer switch for me to do so. And I don't really have anything else that can handle hits from this at this point in time. And that was really the biggest mistake. I should have let Probopass die this turn so I could have had a safe switch instead of losing another Pokemon on top of it. But it kind of is what it is at this point. I've pretty much checked out mentally at this point in time. I actually remember telling him this. I wasn't really... By the time that I lost Blaziken, I knew that I had screwed up enough where it didn't matter too much. And since I wasn't going to get burned from a Flame Orb because I don't have one, I figured let's just deal some damage, start whittling this thing down, and see if I can do anything about Manectric at this point in time. As we're circling our characters. Still waiting. And there's the hit. And I go back to... Swallow comes back to me. And I figure just let Probopass die at this point in time. Because quite frankly, there isn't anything else that it's going to be able to do. So I switch into Probopass. He takes some South Rock damage. And then he gets his speed lowered again. And then, and only then, is he allowed to die. God bless Probopass. So at this point, I'm still trying to figure out what it is that I want to do. I could Sucker Punch, but there's no guarantee that it would kill at this point in time. And honestly, though, it is the safest bet, because if I get a crit on the Sucker Punch, I think I can kill. And even then, it's still not completely promising. After all the effects are done. I'm just saying, screw it. Let's go for the Sucker Punch. So he does end up going for the Thunderbolt. He does end up paralyzing me. Sucker Punch, as you see, doesn't do much. And unfortunately, at this point, if I get paralyzed while I'm going for the Sucker Punch, I'm not killing this Manectric. But luckily, I push through the Parahacks, and I do end up killing the Manectric. At this point, I still only have the Shiftry and the Sableye left, so my odds still aren't looking that great. Especially because he does still have that Medicham in the back. But we can only do what we can do, and that's about it. So he ends up bringing out his Wigglytuff, which I already know I outspeed under normal conditions, but because I'm paralyzed, there isn't much else that I can do. So here, I'm just kind of weighing out my options, like what can I do here? Do I go for the Sucker Punch and hope that I hit? Hopefully it deals enough damage for Sableye to come out. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter because I do end up getting paralyzed. He gets his wish. And I'm like, great. So now what am I to do? There isn't much that I can do. So I decided to just go for the Nasty Plot, see what happens. He goes for the Dazzling Gleam. And there goes Shiftry. And then ultimately, there goes Sableye as well, because there's nothing that I can do about Wigglytuff with Sableye. I also have Swallow. I forgot I had Swallow in the background still. Swallow isn't going to be able to deal enough damage to the Wigglytuff because this Wigglytuff is max health. At least from what I suspect. And even after a Brave Bird, it's just not going to deal enough damage. Without Guts, Swallow doesn't deal enough damage to be able to kill much of anything. And while this is a Guts Swallow, it is Choice Scarf specifically for that Metachan, because otherwise Metachan does end up running over everything in my party. Yep, there's the damage that I dealt, and there's all that damage right back to his health pool. I effectively did like 10% damage after that berry. He goes for the Dazzling Gleam, kills Swallow, and that's the match at this. Or that's this battle at least, because Sableye is going to come in, not going to be able to do much, unfortunately. Dazzling Gleam does just kill from this. You know, it's 100% guaranteed to kill at this point. Let's get past all the effects. Dazzling Gleam, and 27. I go for the knockoff just for some residual damage. Doesn't deal very much. At this point, there isn't anything else that I can do. I've pretty much accepted defeat at this point because there's just nothing that I can do. And with another Dazzling Gleam, I faint, and he ends up winning this battle 3-0. Alright, and let's go into the third battle. Okay, cool. So with this battle, I lead off with Probopass. I just decided to go for body presses from the get-go. There isn't really much else I can do against this Shuckle, and like I said, taunting it's not going to work, so I just say screw it. Let's go ahead and just get this going. So I go for 1 Iron Defense, putting him in +2. Well, he goes for his Stealth Rocks, putting them Rocky Boys on the field. At this point, I'm pretty used to trying to play around the Stealth Rock damage and play around the Sticky Webs. So I have a good idea as to what outspeeds, what doesn't, what my damages are, since I've seen just about everything except for that Metachan. So he goes for the Sticky Web to set up a second hazard. I go for another Iron Defense because why not? And here he is going to end up going for the knockoff, I believe. Well, I go for my third and final Iron Defense, bringing up my defenses ×4. And he goes for the knockoff, knocking off my Expert Belt, which sucks, but it is what it is. I go for the Body Press, and he ends up switching into his Dusclops, I believe, at this point. Yeah, I end up going for the Body Press here, expecting, you know, maybe he'll stay in. Maybe he'll just sit here and, you know, let me take him this way. But, like I said, he ends up withdrawing his Shuckle. And he ends up sending out his Dusclops. Which is a Ghost type, and thus my Body Press just kind of goes straight through. So here, I kind of feel like he wants to try and burn the Probopass, which is fine. But I'm not looking to take that residual damage at this point in time, so I do go for the Volt Switch. Surprisingly, I'm faster, which I thought was really weird, and expecting him to go for the Will-O-Wisp, I decide to take advantage of that and burn my Swallow. Because if I can get that Guts boost, I still conceal the fact that I have a Choice Scarf, because he hasn't seen my orb go off at all. Because Swallow's only been in for a turn and dip, so he doesn't expect that I have a Choice Scarf at all. So I get my Guts boost, I'm Scarfed, I'm like, okay. I know that at this point in time, I can't kill the Duskull with this without killing myself. So I decide, let's just go for the U-turn. And, you know, just GTFO. So go for the U-turn. Swap out. And I end up going into my Blaze again. Take the rocks damage, take the web. He goes for the plane split, which deals not a whole lot. Because I'm practically still full health. He's still practically still full health. And I'm like, you know what? Let's go for the Earthquake. Let's see what happens. That was pretty good evidence. So I go for the Earthquake. Dusclops takes it super well. As he should. That's no surprise. Never has been. But I'm really just trying to get rid of this Dusclops. And he still goes for the plane split. Probably just try to make his Dusclops live for as long as possible. And here, I go for another Earthquake. This one does bring him into berry range, which means he's just going to get all that health back with the Citrus Berry, which sucks, but it does make him use the Citrus Berry as early as possible. And then this is where he reveals his final move with Nightshade, which is a little surprising, but it makes sense. So here, I decide, you know what? Let's just go ahead, go into the Flare Blitz. Bring him as close to dead as possible. And it does bring him as close to dead as physically possible. But he does go for that Nightshade again, meaning that Rooster once again has died. So at this point, I bring out my Sableye. I know that I can kill this thing. He knows I can kill this thing. But he is going to want to try and keep it alive for as long as possible. So I decided to just go for the knockoff. Knock off whatever item of whatever Pokemon decides to step into Sableye's way. And luckily, again, he does end up going for the Wigglytuff, meaning I get to knock off its berry, which is just a bunch of health that I don't have to deal with. At this point, I decide I'm going to go ahead and switch out. I'm going to bring in Papa Smurf because he can take a Dazzling Gleam pretty okay. And then I can go ahead and just go for the Sludge Wave, meaning that Wigglytuff could die here if he decides to leave it in. It won't. So here, withdraw Sableye, go into Papa Smurf. Yeah, he's just grooving and schmooving, just dancing with the Wigglytuff. And he takes damage from that like a champ. That's all to be expected at this point. So I'll go for the safe Sludge Wave. Because he doesn't have any Steel types on his team, meaning that I can safely go for it and it'll just deal a chunk of damage to anything that comes in. And he is deciding who he wants to go into. He's still got that Shuckle in his back pocket at, I believe, full health. He still has the Latios, again, at full health. So he's got options as to whatever he wants to go into. And they're all very good options. But in this case, he does end up deciding to go into Shuckle because it is his best bet for survival. I go for the Sludge Wave, dealing as much damage as I possibly can to this thing, which is still absolutely pitiful. So here, I decided to go for the Earth Power. Wham bam. And he goes for the knockoff, knocking off my Life Orb. And effectively crippling the Nidoking, because this means that now his hits are just not going to do much damage at all. Which sucks, granted, but, you know, what else are we going to do? I didn't want anything else getting its item knocked off, especially not the Swallow, at this point in time. And so I go, hit the Earth Power, would have killed with the Life Orb, but because I don't have it anymore, it doesn't. He goes for another knockoff. And I say, you know what? I should go for a third Earth Power. Kill this Shuckle now. If he decides to leave it in, if he doesn't, then something else is going to take a Earth Power to the face. He leaves it in. And finally, the Shuckle goes down. So at this point, he still does have the Latios. He does still have the Dusclops. The Dusclops he's going to want to keep alive. And he's got a decision to make. Who does he want to have come in? Everything on his team just about outspeeds at this point, so whatever he brings in, it's going to hurt. He decides to go out for the Manectric. And I'm like, okay. I know I shouldn't be able to take a Flamethrower from this, so we'll just go ahead and go for the Earth Power. He's probably going to go for a Flamethrower for some other move, and it's probably going to kill. So even if I live with even 1 HP, 1 HP is enough, I can deal with an Earth Power. So while he's making his decision, I'm just figuring out what it is that he wants to do, probably doing some damage calcs, figuring this stuff out. We wait. He goes for the Choice Specs Flamethrower, which does kill Papa Smurf. So you got the Manectric out. I think I can outspeed this. He predicts a Facade, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go for Brave Bird because I know he's still got that Dusclops in the back. And it's at super low health, meaning I'm going to be able to live the hit. At least from the recoil. And he's debating if he does want to switch into Dusclops, predict the Facade, which is a very strong possibility. And I believe at this HP, it could kill the Manectric. And I'm definitely outspeeding because of the Choice Scarf. So he does end up switching out. He does go into the Dusclops. And the Dusclops does end up dying to the Brave Bird. And I only take a little bit of recoil because, you know, that much health isn't going to translate to a lot. Bam. So now, he knows that the only thing on his team that can outspeed is his Medicham. At least that's what he thinks, because he still thinks that I have a Flame Orb. So, in complete confidence, he decides to bring in the Medicham. Eventually. Today. Maybe. There it is. So, at this point in time, I know he has Ice Punch. I know that Medicham is Choice Scarfed. It would normally kill Swallow under no.
貴様の拳などかほどにも効かんわい。お前はもう死んでいる。何？
Like 10 miles away at his home, I can hear him swearing my name for the fact that I outsped him with a Choice Scarf Swallow to kill his Medicham. And now with the Medicham out of the way, Swallow did its only job of taking that thing out, because that's really the only reason I Scarfed Swallow was to take out the Medicham. I very safely bring in Sableye. He brings in Wigglytuff. I don't want to stay in for this. So I am perfectly okay with switching back out, expecting a Dazzling Gleam. And I go into the Probopass. The Probopass I know can take care of it. So then Wigglytuff goes for the Dazzling Gleam. Eventually. And it does pitiful amounts of damage. I know he's going to want to switch out. Because Wigglytuff can't really do much to this. So I go for an Iron Defense. Looking to boost that Body Press. So he ends up withdrawing the Wigglytuff. And brings out the Manectric. At this point in time, I was a little confused why Manectric. I couldn't figure out why. That's because I didn't know at the time that Manectric had Switcheroo as a move. Which is what he ends up going for. So I decided, you know what, let's just go for the Body Press, get some damage off. He goes for the Switcheroo. So I am super happy I decided to go with Body Press. So I get the Choice Specs. He gets Body Pressed. Meaning that effectively at this point in time, the Manectric is as good as dead since the Dusclops died a few turns ago. He goes for the Volt Switch. Goes back to Sindragonlord. And I believe goes into the Latios. I go for the Body Press looking to deal some more damage. And it deals a good amount of damage here. So I'm just going to keep Body Pressing because there's no reason not to. Probopass can deal a lot of damage to Latios, as evident. I believe it's still a 4-hit KO, though, which is a little on the light side, but still totally worth it. And I believe he ends up going for the Thunderbolt here, which doesn't deal enough to kill me, which is nice. Still about the same thing, 4 or 5-hit KO. And there's a reminder that the battle will be ending in 3 minutes. I just keep clicking Body Press. Because there's nothing else that I can really do here. And Probopass has kind of done his part. He does get paralyzed, which sucks. I still get another Body Press off, thankfully, killing the Latios with Probopass. At this point, everything and anything he has outspeeds me. Whether or not it can kill me is completely dependent on paralysis. So I go for another Body Press. You know, again, safe moves. Why not? That and I'm Choice Specs at the moment. So safe moves anyways. Not really much of a choice. He does go for the flamethrower, which I know doesn't kill from this health because a critical hit did a little bit more damage than that. I go for the body press, dealing maximum amounts of damage. But I know I won't live past this turn, which means that I do have to say goodbye to Probo Pass. While he did fantastic, just gotta say goodbye sometimes. Rest in peace. Now, for my first battle, I do remember that I outspeed with Trees Nuts. And with that knowledge in hand, I go into Trees Nuts. I take the sticky webs. I play with those beautiful floating rocks. And I shoot off an energy ball that I know can kill from this range with the Wigglytuff. So there's the energy ball. There's the fall in of the fairy. Here's the Manectric. Also at super low health. And here, I just decide, let's just go for the Sucker Punch. Which goes off. And that's the game. After this, me and Sindragonlord actually did end up calling each other, and I'll be fully honest here. I did not expect to win that battle, but the only reason why I did was because of a very unorthodox and very well appreciated Scarf Swallow. Anyways, everyone, thank you so very much for stopping by. I know that this has been a very long video with my voice. You know, I hope that you have a good rest of your day. Check me out at twitch.tv/Mr. Vlad the Man. I do stream Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, starting at 9 p.m. Arizona Standard Time. Check out Sindragonlord, twitch.tv/Sindragonlord. All of our links will be in the description down below. And then I'll also be putting in the Global Pokemon Society in that as well. Keep another eye out for another battle here later on this week. I'm actually versing another close friend of mine, Chrysalianius, and it is going to be a battle to remember. So remember to comment, sub, like, peace.